All right, guys, let's talk. People are regretting getting solar panels. I talk to you guys about the cost and the benefit and or the reasons why this might be in this video. So I'm going to talk about the good side to it as well as the bad side. And let's just be frank. The people who are regretting this, pretty much they got ripped off because they didn't understand how it works. They didn't do their research. They got the salesman that comes to their door, walks up and tells you, oh, look, your electric bill is going to be free. I mean, come on. Whatever in life is free. You know, you don't get away with anything for nothing. There's no such thing as something for nothing. You got to know that. But people want to think somehow that there's something for nothing and they're going to win by getting this magic solar panel put on their roof. So you got a lot of people right now whining and complaining because they got a $40,000 loan for solar, and it shouldn't have cost but a third of that or 20% of that, 25% of that, and they got ripped off. And they don't understand why that they've got this big loan and they're trying to sell our house and they can't sell their house because they got solar on it because they got a loan, all this stuff. We're going to get into the details of this and we're going to get into the way not to do that, and also how that you can get solar and actually win, because I've had solar on my house for about 10 years now, and a lot of the things that they're talking about, like the loss and all that stuff, how that the solar panels aren't producing as much, I haven't noticed any of that. So anyway, we'll get into that a little bit later in the video. So how do people get ripped off in the solar thing? Is the salesman. I had two of these guys come to my house and I had to ask them, or three, and I had to ask them politely to leave. In fact, I almost had to tell the guy, you need to leave now, because, you know, he was just like, he didn't know. He was just a young guy trying to make a buck, selling solar. You know, I think he came from the used car business or something. Maybe he was in the mortgage business. I don't know. One of those two. But maybe he was a realtor. I don't know. But anyway, he was selling solar door to door, comes to my house, and he you know, I was doing research on it at the time, and I had looked up for 7 kilowatts of solar, you know, what it would cost to do it. And I ended up paying, I'll tell you this first, because then it makes more sense. It cost me $13,500, and I bought a kit, and that's more expensive than if you just buy the parts and do it yourself. We'll talk about why I did that, but it is a little more expensive. And the kit installed and everything else was less than $15,000 with a permit and everything else. And I got, at the time, the $3,000 rebate. So it basically cost me $13,500 for the whole system with the rebate, because we got back $3,000 as soon as we were done. So basically it cost me about $13,500. But even without it, it's still a good deal if you do it right. The system I have, it basically pays my electric bill, except for in the winter, I might have a $50 a month bill. I also do have a $20 a month hookup to the grid fee, which is kind of stupid. I don't understand that, but I kind of do, but I don't, because they got to send me a bill, and eventually I want to get the system where I have, you know, I'm doing all my own and I'm just off grid. But, you know, we'll have to talk about that a little bit later. So within a couple of years, mine was paid for. It's the only way it works out. Okay. And I paid cash. I did not get a loan. That's the stupid part that everybody does wrong. And because the guy comes to your house, and what they do is they come and sit down and they go, look, as electric prices are going up, our price is going to be the same for the next 15 or 20 years. Your payment's going to be the same. And over that time, you're going to save all this money because your payment's going to be about what your electric bill is in the beginning. And as electric prices go up, it'll end up being less than the cost of electricity. And at the end, you get your solar system paid off and you have no electric bill. That's basically the sales pitch. So the guy comes in, he tries to show me how this is going to work. And I go, dude, listen, I've already done my research. I know how much solar I need to produce. and I need about 7. I really need about 8 kilowatts for me to be zeroed out, but I think I could probably work with 7, and that's what I ended up with. If I got, and it's because I would have gone bigger, but the city wouldn't give me rebates on that at the time, so I just went with 7. And it was more difficult to get that extra kilowatt because I had to run another home run wiring. It's a whole complicated thing. But so I got 7 kilowatts of solar, and it ended up working out. The guy sits there and he starts telling me how this is going to look. So basically what you're telling me, how big of a system am I going to need? And he looks at my bills and everything. He goes, yeah, you need 7 kilowatts. I said, I already know that. So he says, you need about 7 kilowatts. And I go, well, I probably need 8, but it's not going to zero me out. Oh, no, it'll zero you out. I go, no, I already know. They don't produce nearly as much as what they say they're going to produce because of how the sun angle is and all this stuff. You got to know your stuff on this stuff. It takes a little bit of time to research it all. So the guy proceeds, and I go, listen, let's cut the chase. Give me the bottom line. How much is this going to cost? And he kind of hems and haws, doesn't want to tell me. You know, it'll be so much a month. Like, I don't care. I'm not paying that. I'm paying cash. And he goes, $55,000. And I said, thank you. You can leave now. That's way overpriced. So this is what happens. This is why people are regretting the solar experience, because they got ripped off. They got the wrong guy and fell for the scam, okay, and got some stupid idiots that went up on their roofs and they didn't know what they were doing, and they broke tiles. I've seen all this stuff at different houses. They broke tiles on their roof leaks. They didn't use the proper brand and quality of sealant for the holes. You have to do it in the right way, and they didn't do it, and their roof leaks. Okay, so they say, well, you shouldn't put them on the roof because the roof's going to leak, and all that stuff is just can be a complete farce if you don't do it. If you do it wrong, if you do it wrong, it's gonna ring true. If you just do it the right way, that's not going to happen. But, you know, this is life, right? So nobody wants to hear that they got ripped off. So I know a bunch of people are going to be, oh, you're just an whatever. Okay, this is the honest to God truth. They got ripped off. Okay, they got a $13,000 solar system for $55,000. Another person comes to my house. And he says the same thing. He goes, oh, yeah, we could show you by. And I said, listen, same thing. I said, okay, no. Don't show me the pitch. I've already done the numbers. What's the bottom line? How much per kilowatt? And he's like, $35,000. I'm going, thank you very much, but I'm not interested. He goes, what? How much are you going to get it done for? I said, oh, I know I can do it for a lot less than that. So he got up and left. I mean, think about this for a second. If I can buy a kit, which is more expensive than buying the solar panels individually and buying the whole down system individually and buying the plans, okay, or doing my own plans or whatever, okay, and I got it for $13,000, okay. These guys have their own in-house people to do all that stuff. They've got a giant amount of money for labor and commissions. Okay, a giant amount of money in there. And this is the real problem, is the scammers are out there scamming. Because why? Because they're getting government money backed. If people are thinking, oh, wow, I'm going to get all this money off of my taxes and all this other stuff, then that entitles them to charge you more money. And so people got ripped off. A lot of people got ripped off buying these solar panels underneath these stupid government rebates and all this other stuff. When it didn't need that, it's actually a really good deal if you do it the right way. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So the other problem with buying solar panels is people, again, they didn't pay cash. They went out and they got a fat loan, and they're trying to sell their house, and nobody wants to buy it because there's solar panels on this loan. And they got to take it over, and basically you're scamming the next person because you got scammed. All right, you're trying to sell your house, packing a big solar bill on it, and trying to give that to them. Most people are not going to buy that, okay? Just so you know. And it's funny because people are just shocked. They're not going to take over my solar ripoff loan. Oh, of course not. You know, I mean, people aren't dumb. A lot of people are not dumb. So, but a lot of people are. That's just the way it is. All right, because they got these ripoff deals. And another thing is, they get the salesman over and he goes, well, this is going to be so much, you know, a $50,000 loan on your house. So, and they go, well, that's going to give me a zeroed out bill. Well, what about if I just do, you know, a third of that? And so they still overpay for their solar. So they get, you know, they get a smaller system. They got 8 panels instead of getting 28. And they go out and it saves them $20 a month, and they got a $50 a month bill. So yeah, of course they got ripped off again. Same thing. Salesman made his commission. Company got a bunch of money for cheap labor to go up there and break all your tiles on your roof, and penetrations. Whoops, I missed. Whoops, I missed. Whoops, I missed. Dude, there's something called a chalk line. Okay, you put a chalk line down where your you know, your rafter starts and goes all the way down, and then you drill into the chalk line. You know, that's usually how you get, you know, the right place. But these guys, you know, you get cheap labor, and they're just making all this markup, and you know, this is how it works. The solar companies are scammers. Most of them are. There's only a few out there that maybe do the work and do it properly, and it makes it, all the others that make it look bad are just no good. So you want to know how to do it. You wonder, okay, well, Mike, how do I get solar? How do I get solar and have it work and get a good deal and have no bill? Because basically in the summer, my air conditioning is at 76 degrees and it's 100 degrees outside, and I have no bill in the summer. And that would be $400, $500 a month easily. And I have no bill, nothing, okay, in the summer. I only get little bills in the winter, and that's because the angle of the sun. So you have to know these things in advance. Number one, where is your house located? Okay, is it located in an area where you get solid sun most of the day? The problem is a lot of people try and put solar on when their house is down in a gully somewhere and the sun's skimming the mountains around them, and you don't get sun on your panels all day long. Even in the roof is a great place to put them because it's nice and high, unless you're going to put up, you know, a rack system where they're 20 feet up. And most people are not going to be able to afford to do that, and maybe that's even more hazardous than putting them on the roof. If it's done properly on the roof, if you do your penetrations right and all this other stuff, okay, and you do it yourself, so you don't have these idiots up there, or you hire like a normal electrician, and you can probably, I'm going to say most people could probably put up their own solar panel. The solar panel part of it's very easy to do. And so you got these guys that go, well, my roof, I had my roof replaced. It cost me double. You got ripped off. You got ripped off. It does not take that long to take the panels down. I could go up to my roof. I could take all the panels down in a day. So they're charging you 20 grand to take your panels down, put them back up. Come on. You got ripped off. All right. If that's the case, you got ripped off. Everything's got a little plug and play situation. The other thing is that people do is they go and get those giant inverters because it's cheaper. You get the big giant inverter. If you have something called microinverters on your panels, they're small little inverters, and everything on your roof is 220 volts, 2 legs of 110. So everything on your roof is 110. You know, it's if a fireman goes up there, he's not going to get, you know, 300 volts run through him. So they're, you know, it's a different situation. This is why this other stuff happens. So people go, well, I didn't want to put my house out because it was on fire because I had solar panels. Well, that's because you have the big giant inverter, or you have a fire hazard from that big giant inverter. You have all this voltage going in series, going to this big inverter to create power. Big problem. That's one of the big problems. And this is one of the other issues people say is you get fire hazard from solar. There's literally almost no potential fire hazard when you have microinverters. So those are things you want to look at. Microinverters, do it yourself, and have an electrician do the final hookup. So, and are you in a location that has good sun? So if you're up in the north, let's say you're up in North Dakota, there's not as much sun up there. You're up in Canada, there's not as much sun up there. You're only going to produce, if that's a 7 kilowatt solar system, you're probably only going to produce about 4 with a 7, because you're not going to get enough sun during that day to be able to do it. So it doesn't work for everyone. And this is one of the things that the government, that pisses me off about, like California and stuff like that. It doesn't, they say everybody should have solar. Every new home should have solar. What about the ones up in the mountains where there's trees all the way around the house? It makes no sense. Or it's down in a valley, okay? In a valley, and there's mountains all the way around it. In the wintertime, you get nothing. In the summertime, you get, about 60% of the sun that everybody else gets. It doesn't work for those places. You can't use them. So you have to go with another means. Maybe if you want to do green energy or whatever, you can get, windmills or something. But you're just going to be paying the bill, okay? That's the way it is. You just have to do it. And governments are trying to force this down people's neck, and it's not right. And that's why this stuff happens. You get these solar companies prey on it. They know, oh, look, this is probably not going to give them very much juice, but we're going to sell it to them anyway because we want to make a commission. And they're ripping people off. So this is what's been happening, and this is why people are so upset. And they've got solar. So the thing is, I don't want to discourage you if you want to do it, because if you're like me, okay, and you paid 13 grand, and in what is it about? I think it was it's about a savings of $200. It's about $2,400 a year, okay, a little more than that maybe. $2,600 a year. So in 3 years, I'm ahead. Then it makes sense. Okay, then it makes 100% sense. You got to be able to do the math. If you can't do the math, then don't do it. If your bill is like $150 a month, okay, then you only need a smaller system. You may only need like 4 or 5 kilowatts, okay, and you have to make the system bigger than what your demand is, because even though it's rated at 4 or 5 kilowatts, if the sun's not at straight, and that's when it's straight at the panel. If it's like this, it ain't gonna do it. It has to be like this. So if your panel is west facing, like my panels are west facing because I can't get south facing. If I got south facing, it'd be better, but I also have trees that the sun scaves, during the winter. So when the sun's at an angle, and I would get less production those years, that time. So you have to kind of work with someone. So the other thing is a solar kit. Why did I go with a solar kit? It all depends on your local city codes. So you need to know all this stuff before you do it. You can't just rely on someone else, because someone else has a sales commission. They got money to get from you, and they don't care. They just want to get paid, all right? So you've got to do the work if you want to make it work, all right? So what was I going to say? So the solar kit comes with the solar panels, okay? And where I'm at, it is required, and this is the other thing people do, is they use some crappy hold-down system, something that's not even engineered. So I have to have an engineered hold-down system. Everything that attaches to the roof has to be engineered. The bolts have to be stainless. They have to be engineered for so much strength. Everything has to, and all those things come in a little booklet, okay? And that little booklet I give to the city, and they look at it and they go, okay, this meets our specifications. So the solar kit comes with a hold-down system. It comes with the panels. It comes with the microinverters, and it also comes with plans. So I can take those plans in, and everything met code. So, and you got to make sure that they know how to meet your city codes, and find out what your city codes are, and make sure that it all meets up. So, and when you do that, you get it all in there, and then you pay your permit fee, okay? And if you have a rebate system, you find out what that is, and you get your rebate, which is fine, or not. Either can do it or not, and you're still way ahead. Like I said, 3 years in, mine's already paid for itself. I'm making money every day. The other thing people don't understand about it is they go, well, the electric companies stop paying us for the extra energy. If you're doing it for that reason, that's the wrong reason. How it works is during the day, my meter runs whatever it is. I guess they go the opposite direction. I guess they go counterclockwise or whatever. And during the day, it goes the opposite way. So during the day, I'm generating energy and putting it back on the grid. And at night, I'm sucking energy back and my meter goes backwards. So it's not about buying and selling energy to your company. It's about your total, what do they call it? Net use, I think is what it's called. So they go by your net use every month. You know, and if you use less than you produce in a whole year, some places will buy it back from you if you're generating more than what than what you use in a whole year, and they pay you pennies for. It's not even worth it. So if you're doing it for that reason, that's a fail. That's not going to work. Okay, you got to generate what you need and use what you generate. Okay, so during the day, meters run in one direction. At night, it's going the other way, it's going the other way. You're drawing from the grid at night, you're pushing it back on during the day, and it's net metered. So at the end of the month, however many ticks you've gone up or down, tells you what the bill is going to be. So in the summer, I might overgenerate. If my wife didn't put the air conditioning down so damn low, I would overgenerate it during the summer. And then during the winter, I would use the credits from those previous months, and those things just add up, and then it comes back off of your bill. So you end up net zero after the whole year, and it works really good. As long as, number one, you pay cash. Number two, if you do your penetrations on the roof, you put it on the roof, make sure you do it right. That's all I got to say. And people go, well, if I have to get a new roof, they have to take them off. Go up there and take them off yourself. It's not that hard. I can literally take all the solar off my roof. I can just put wire ends on all of the home runs. Okay, the home run connections, and go up there, and I can have it all down in a day, and then I can put it all back up in another day after the new roof's on. So this whole thing about these people getting ripped, they got the wrong people doing the work. That's the problem. You go and hire an idiot, that's what you get. Oh, well, I just hired the first person I could get to get my roof. Nobody wanted to touch it. Yeah, right. You could find somebody, believe me, and you could almost hire a laborer to go up there and take the solar down. It's not hard to do. It's not like it's like, and maybe the reason that they had that problem is because they had one of those big giant inverters on the side of the wall, and they didn't get the micro inverters and spend a little bit more money on their system. They got the big giant inverter because it's cheaper, okay? And then they got 300 volts all the time. See, as soon as I go up and I turn off my solar, there's no voltage up there. I can go up and unplug all the wires and there's nothing's hot. They do not produce energy until they have 3 minutes of energy going to them. So when I turn on my breaker with a microinverter system, I turn the breaker on, my system does not produce until it has 3 minutes of energy being sourced to it. And then it starts to outproduce, okay? So the microinverter system is completely safe, okay? And the other way, where they're all hooked up in series, yeah, you can get freaking electrocuted from that. You know, as soon as the sun hits those solar panels, they're producing energy. And if it's in series, you might have 600 volts on a wire inside of a little tube, you know, and that's going to your microinverter. Well, of course, you wonder why they have fires is because they got all that energy inside that tube. And it says right on it, you know, you have to put on the stickers on the thing, high energy. You know, mine doesn't say that, none of that, because I don't have that. I have microinverters. The inverters are right at the panel. So when I disconnect, I turn it off. There's no energy up there at all. Everything turns off. Okay, solar, the microinverters, all that shuts off. And then all I do is go around and disconnect everything. It's all plug and play. You just unplug it. You unplug your microinverters. You unplug everything. You pull the solar panels off, and you got your roof underneath. It's really not hard. It's just because people are doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong. They hire the wrong people. They don't do their research, and that's why you got people on there complaining all over the place, going, man, you know, you got ripped off. Okay. All right. I'll talk to you next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.